Welcome to Story Tales. Please like this video and subscribe to Story Tales. I hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin. Tom Creed sat in his worn leather recliner, watching the Seahawks game on the old flat screen. The garage door opener hummed to life, then shut again. Probably Pauline grabbing something from her car. Saturday afternoons meant peace in the Creed household, or what passed for peace these days. The front door opened with a soft click. Tom glanced at the clock. 2:47 p.m. Early for Pauline to be back from her wellness center shift. Dad! Reed's voice came from the hallway, shaky and wrong. Tom muted the television and turned toward the sound. His 12-year-old son stood in the doorway between the living room and kitchen, his small frame trembling. In his hands, he held Tom's Glock 19. The black metal gleamed under the afternoon light, streaming through the windows. Reed's finger rested near the trigger guard, not on it, but close enough to make Tom's chest tighten. The boy's eyes were red-rimmed, tears streaming down his cheeks. Reed. Tom's voice stayed level calm. He'd faced loaded weapons before. In Kandahar, men with far more training and far worse intentions had pointed guns at him. But this was different. This was his son. "I'm sorry, Dad." Reed's voice cracked. "I'm so sorry." Tom slowly placed his hands on the armrests of his chair. No sudden movements. No raised voice. "What's going on, buddy?" She said you were going to hurt us." Reed's hand shook harder. "She said if I didn't do something, you'd kill her." The words hit Tom like cold water. She said, Pauline, his wife of 14 years, had convinced their son to point a loaded weapon at him. "Reed, look at me." Tom shifted forward slightly. "When have I ever hurt you? When have I ever hurt your mother?" "I don't know." Reed sobbed. "I don't know anything anymore." Tom stood slowly, hands visible. "Son, I need you to point that gun away from me." Point it at the floor. "I can't." She said if I don't. "She's not here right now." Tom took one careful step forward. "It's just you and me. Your dad who taught you to ride a bike. Who'll help you build that treehouse. Who sits with you when you have nightmares." Reed's aim wavered. The gun dipped toward the carpet. "That's good, Reed. You're doing good." Tom moved closer, his voice steady as granite. "Now I'm going to take the gun. You're not in trouble. You're scared, and someone lied to you." Tom reached out and gently wrapped his fingers around the barrel. Reed let go instantly and collapsed into his father's chest, sobbing. Tom engaged the safety and ejected the magazine with practiced efficiency, checking the chamber. Loaded. One in the pipe. His wife had given their son a loaded weapon and told him to point it at his father. Tom held Reed tight, feeling the boy's small body shake against him. "It's okay now. It's over." But it wasn't over. It was just beginning. The front door opened again. Pauline's voice called out, bright and artificial. "Hello? I'm home." Her footsteps clicked across the hardwood floor. Tom released Reed, but kept one hand on his shoulder. The gun lay in pieces on the coffee table, magazine separate, chamber empty. Pauline appeared in the doorway, her yoga mat slung over her shoulder, that practiced smile on her face. The smile died when she saw Reed's tear-stained cheeks, the dismantled weapon, and Tom's expression. What happened?" Her voice pitched higher. Color drained from her face like water from a broken sink. Tom said nothing. He just looked at her, really looked, at the way her eyes darted to the gun parts, then to Reed, then anywhere but his face. At how her hand clutched the yoga mat strap like a lifeline. At the fresh bruise on her collarbone that makeup couldn't quite hide. "Tom!" Her voice cracked. "What's wrong? Why is Reed crying?" Still, Tom remained silent. He guided Reed toward the stairs with gentle pressure on his shoulder. "Go to your room, son. We'll talk later." Reed glanced between his parents, confusion and fear warring on his young face. He ran upstairs, his feet pounding on the wooden steps. Tom turned back to his wife. 14 years of marriage. 14 years of trust, of building a life together, of believing in her. All of it crumbling in the space between one heartbeat and the next. "Tom, please, talk to me." Pauline stepped forward, her hand reaching out that he walked past her without a word, his shoulder brushing hers as he headed for the garage. The silence he left behind cut deeper than any accusation, any rage, any violence ever could. Behind him, he heard her whisper, "Oh God, What have I done? Dinner that night was a masterclass in tension. Tom had made spaghetti and meatballs Reed's favorite while Pauline sat at the kitchen island, her phone face down beside her plate. She picked at her food, glancing at Tom every few seconds. Reed pushed pasta around his plate, his appetite gone. The silence stretched like a wire about to snap. "Reed," Tom said quietly, "can you help me with something in the garage after dinner?" The boy nodded, not looking up. "Tom." Pauline's voice was barely above a whisper. "We need to talk." "Do we?" Tom cut a meatball in half with his fork. "I think everything's been said." "Nothing's been said. You haven't said a word to me since our son pointed a loaded gun at me." Tom's voice remained calm, but something cold lurked beneath the surface. "Since he told me his mother convinced him I was going to kill her." Pauline's fork clattered to her plate. Reed flinched. "I can explain." "Can you?" Tom finally looked at her directly. "Can you explain why you told our 12-year-old son to threaten me with a weapon? Can you explain where you got the idea that I would hurt either of you?" Tears started flowing down Pauline's cheeks. "I was scared, Tom. I was confused and scared and—" "Scared of what?" His voice cut through her explanation like a blade. "Scared of the man who's worked 2 jobs to keep this family fed? Scared of the man who's never raised a hand to either of you? What exactly were you scared of, Pauline?" She opened her mouth, then closed it. No answer came. "That's what I thought." Tom turned to Reed. "Come on, son. Let's go talk." The garage smelled of motor oil and sawdust. Tom's workbench dominated one wall, tools arranged with military precision. He gestured for Reed to sit on an old wooden stool while he leaned against the workbench, arms crossed. "Tell me what happened today." "From the beginning." Reed's voice was small, broken. "Mom came into my room this morning. She was crying. She said you've been acting strange lately, angry. She said she found some papers in your desk that scared her." "What kind of papers?" "I don't know. She wouldn't show me. But she said—" Reed's voice cracked again. "She said you were planning to hurt us, that you've been planning it for weeks." Tom's jaw tightened. "And she told you to get my gun? She said if you came home angry today, if you started yelling or throwing things, I should protect her. She showed me where you kept the key to the gun safe. She said if I didn't do something, you'd kill her, and then probably me too." Each word was a nail in the coffin of Tom's marriage. Pauline hadn't just lied to their son, she'd traumatized him, weaponized him, turned him into a tool of betrayal. "Reed, look at me." Tom knelt down, so they were eye level. "Have I ever, in your entire life, hurt you or your mother? Have I ever even raised my voice in anger at either of you?" Reed shook his head. "Have I ever thrown things when I was mad? Broken anything? Punched walls?" "No, Dad. So when your mother told you these things about me, did any of it sound like the father you know?" Reed's lower lip trembled. "No, but she was so scared, Dad. She was shaking and crying, and I thought maybe I didn't know you as well as I thought." Tom pulled his son into a hug. "You know me, Reed. You know exactly who I am. And whoever told your mother to be afraid of me, they don't know me at all." The garage door opened. Lenny Voss stepped inside, his work boots scuffing on the concrete floor. Tom's brother-in-law was built like a linebacker going soft, with calloused hands and a permanent 5 o'clock shadow. "Hey, Reed, mind if I borrow your dad for a minute?" Reed nodded and headed back into the house. Lenny waited until the door closed before speaking. "We need to talk, Tom. I've been hearing things." "What kind of things?" Lenny pulled out his phone and showed Tom a text message. "My wife got this from her friend Janet. Janet's been seeing Pauline around town. Late nights. Meeting someone." The text read, "Saw Pauline again at Forest Trail parking lot. 11 p.m. Tuesday. Same guy. Dark hair, expensive car. Thought you should know." Tom's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. "How long?" "At least 6 weeks, from what I can piece together." "Tom, there's more." Lenny looked uncomfortable. "Ms. Granger called me this afternoon. She wanted to talk to you, but she was afraid to come over directly. She's been watching the house. And she saw a man sneak in through your back gate last weekend, when you were on that school trip with the kids. Stayed about 2 hours." Tom nodded slowly, his mind already working, pieces falling into place. Pauline's strange behavior over the past month, her sudden interest in working late shifts, the new clothes, the expensive perfume, And now, this using their son as a weapon against him. Thanks for telling me, Lenny. What are you going to do? Tom picked up a screwdriver from his workbench, testing its weight in his hand. I'm going to find out exactly what my wife has been up to, and then I'm going to deal with it. Tom, this isn't Afghanistan, Lenny. I'm not going to do anything stupid, but I'm also not going to let her destroy my family with lies and manipulation. Lenny nodded grimly. You need anything, you call me, day or night. After Lenny left, Tom stood alone in his garage. He walked to his workbench and opened the bottom drawer. Inside was a small black notebook, pristine and unused. He'd bought it years ago, but never had occasion to use it. Tonight, that changed. Tom sat at his kitchen table at 2 a.m., the house silent around him. Pauline had gone to bed early, claiming a headache. Reed was finally asleep after Tom had spent an hour talking him through what happened, reassuring him that none of it was his fault. The black notebook lay open in front of him. On the first page, he'd written 3 names: Pauline, unknown male, and below that, he'd started a timeline. 6 weeks ago, behavior change begins last weekend. Man enters house while Tom away today. Reed, weaponized against Tom. Tom had survived 3 tours in Afghanistan. He'd learned how to gather intelligence, how to identify threats, how to plan operations with surgical precision. But more than that, he'd learned patience, how to wait, watch, and strike only when victory was certain. He thought about Reed's tear-stained face, the way his son's hands had shaken while pointing that gun. Pauline had done that. She'd taken their innocent child and turned him into a weapon of betrayal. For what? For some man she was meeting in parking lots? Tom's chest burned with a cold fire. Not rage. Rage was hot and stupid and led to mistakes. This was something else. Something controlled and methodical and infinitely more dangerous that he'd trusted Pauline completely. Given her everything: his loyalty, his love, his protection, his future. She'd taken all of that and used it against him, used their son against him. That was a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Tom closed the notebook and walked upstairs. Pauline lay on her side of the bed, her back to the door. In the dim light from the hallway, he could see her shoulders shaking slightly. She was awake, probably crying. He felt nothing. In Kandahar, Tom had learned to identify enemies who wore friendly faces. Insurgents who smiled during the day and planted bombs at night. People who spoke of peace while planning murder. He developed an instinct for betrayal, a sixth sense for lies wrapped in promises. He should have trusted that instinct with Pauline. Tom got ready for bed in the bathroom, brushing his teeth while looking at himself in the mirror. Same face as always. Same brown eyes. Same scar on his left cheek from a piece of shrapnel in '09. But something had changed today. Something fundamental had shifted. When he climbed into bed, Pauline rolled toward him. Tom. Her voice was soft, vulnerable. I'm sorry about today. I was confused and scared, and I made a terrible mistake. Can we talk about this? He lay on his back, staring at the ceiling. Go to sleep, Pauline. Please. I know I messed up, but we can fix this. We can go to counseling, or go to sleep. She was quiet for a long moment. Then, do you still love me? Tom turned his head and looked at her in the darkness. Even in the dim light, he could see the desperation in her eyes, the fear. She knew something had broken today, something that couldn't be repaired with apologies and tears. Go to sleep, he said again, but Tom didn't sleep. He lay awake until dawn, planning. Tom woke at 5:30 a.m., same as always. He dressed quietly in the dark, then went downstairs to start coffee. Sunday morning routine, normal as breathing. When Pauline came down an hour later, he was at the stove making pancakes. Morning, he said without looking up. Morning. Her voice was cautious, testing the waters. Reed appeared in the doorway, still in his pajamas. He looked between his parents nervously. Hey, buddy, want pancakes? Tom flipped one expertly, the same way he had every Sunday for the past 5 years. Yeah, Dad. Thanks. Tom served Reed first, then Pauline, then himself. He poured orange juice, asked Reed about his homework, commented on the weather. Normal. Calm. Like yesterday had never happened. But Pauline wasn't fooled. Tom could see it in her eyes the way she watched him, studied his face for cracks in the facade. She was waiting for the explosion that never came, the confrontation that he refused to give her. "Tom," she said finally, "about yesterday. Pass the syrup, would you?" He smiled at Reed. "How's that science project coming along? The one about volcanoes?" Reed brightened, launching into an explanation about baking soda and vinegar. Tom listened with genuine interest, asked follow-up questions, praised his son's ingenuity. The perfect father on a perfect Sunday morning. Pauline's hands trembled as she picked at her pancakes. After breakfast, Tom loaded the dishwasher while humming an old Johnny Cash song. He kissed Reed's forehead, squeezed Pauline's shoulder as he passed her chair. "I'm going to wash the truck," he announced. "Then maybe we can all go to the park." "What do you think, Reed? Can we bring the football?" "Of course." Tom stepped outside into the crisp October air. Through the kitchen window, he could see Pauline sitting at the table, her head in her hands. Her phone buzzed. She looked at it, typed something quickly, then deleted it without sending. Tom smiled as he uncoiled the garden hose. The Valley Motel sat on the outskirts of Spokane, the kind of place where people paid cash and asked no questions. Room 118 smelled of stale cigarettes and industrial disinfectant. Pauline sat on the edge of the bed, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Zev Monroe stood by the window, peering through a gap in the curtains. At 45, he had the kind of smooth confidence that came from years of talking his way out of trouble. His yoga instructor persona was just another mask, carefully crafted to attract vulnerable women like Pauline. "He knows," Pauline said for the third time. "Tom knows about us." "You don't know that." Zev's voice was calm, controlled. "You're panicking." He looked at me like I was already dead. And the way he acted this morning, so normal, so calm. That's not Tom. Tom gets angry when he's hurt. He shouts and storms around, and then we talk it out. This silence is worse. Zev turned from the window. "So, what do you want to do? Call it off? Go back to your boring life with your boring husband?" "I don't know." Pauline stood, pacing the small room. "Maybe we should just tell him. Maybe if we're honest." "Honest?" Zev laughed, the sound cold and sharp. "Pauline, think about what you did yesterday. You convinced your son to point a gun at his father. You think Tom's going to forgive that? You think he's going to shake my hand and wish us well?" Pauline's face crumpled. "I never meant for it to go that far. I was scared he'd fight for custody if he found out. I panicked, and now we're here." Zev sat beside her on the bed, his hand finding her thigh. "But it doesn't have to be the end. We just need to be smarter." "What do you mean? Tom's a veteran, right? PTSD, probably his anger issues he keeps buried. What if he had an episode? What if he became violent?" Pauline stared at him. "Tom doesn't have PTSD. He's never been violent. But who would know that except you? And if you were scared for your safety, scared for Reed's safety, if you had evidence of his violent behavior. You want me to lie about Tom being abusive?" Zev's hand slid higher on her thigh. "I want you to protect yourself. Protect us. If Tom becomes a threat, we need to neutralize that threat." "How?" "We provoke him. Get him angry, get him to lose control. Record it. Then you file for divorce and a restraining order. Full custody of Reed. Tom loses everything, and we get what we want." Pauline was quiet for a long moment. What if he doesn't lose control? What if he just stays calm? Zev's smile was cold as winter. "Everyone has a breaking point, Pauline. We just need to find his." Monday morning, Tom drove to school like any other day. But instead of his usual route, he took a detour past the wellness center where Pauline worked. Her car wasn't in the parking lot, though her shift was supposed to start at 8 a.m. Interesting. During his lunch break, Tom drove to Radio Shack. He bought 2 small digital audio recorders and a GPS tracking device, the kind used to monitor elderly parents or teenage drivers. All perfectly legal purchases. That evening, while Pauline was in the shower, Tom slipped into the garage. It took him less than 2 minutes to install the GPS tracker under her car, hidden behind the rear wheel well. The audio recorder went under her driver's seat, voice-activated and capable of recording for 12 hours before needing to be changed. He was back in the house, reading a magazine on the couch, when Pauline emerged from the bathroom. "What did you do today?" she asked, toweling her hair. "Same as always. Taught kids how to use power tools without losing fingers." Tom didn't look up from his magazine. "How was the wellness center?" "Fine. Busy." She hesitated. "I might need to work some extra shifts this week. We're short-staffed." "Okay." Tom's casual acceptance seemed to unnerve her more than suspicion would have. She stood there for a moment, waiting for questions that never came. That night, after Pauline fell asleep, Tom sat in his home office with his laptop open. He'd spent 2 hours researching Zev Monroe and found very little. The man was a ghost, no social media presence, no online footprint beyond a basic website for his yoga classes. But Tom had resources beyond Google. He pulled out an old cell phone, one he'd kept from his army days, and sent a text to a number he hadn't used in 3 years. Need a background check. Zev Monroe, Spokane area. Yoga instructor. Will pay standard rate. The response came within minutes. Send me what you have. 24-hour turnaround. Tom typed out everything he knew about the man who was destroying his family. Then he closed the laptop and went to bed. Holliston's pawn shop sat in a strip mall between a check-cashing place and a liquor store. The windows were barred, the interior cramped with guitars, jewelry, and various electronics. Hollis himself was a thin man with nervous energy and hands that moved constantly adjusting merchandise, wiping down counters, counting money. Tom entered just before closing time on Tuesday, wearing his work clothes and carrying a small toolbox. We're almost closed, Hollis said without looking up from the register. Just need a new drill bit set. Heard you might have some professional grade stuff. Hollis looked up then, recognizing Tom. His face went pale. Oh, hey Tom. What can I help you with? Like I said, drill bits. Mine are getting dull. Tom browsed the tools section casually. Been doing a lot of work around the house lately. Pauline's got me fixing everything. How is Pauline? Tom glanced up. She's fine. What? No reason. Just asking. Hollis's hands fidgeted with a price tag. Haven't seen her around much lately. She's been busy, working extra shifts at the wellness center. Tom picked up a set of drill bits, examining them closely. You know how it is. Always something that needs fixing, right? Yeah. Hollis cleared his throat. Tom, can I ask you something? Sure. You and Pauline, everything okay at home? She seemed stressed last time I saw her. Tom set down the drill bits and looked directly at Hollis. When did you see her? Last week. She came by asking about. Well, she was looking for someone. Hollis's Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed hard. Someone who could maybe scare someone. She said she was having trouble with a neighbor. Thought maybe if someone had a word with him. Tom's expression didn't change, but he pressed record on the small device in his pocket. What kind of word? I don't know. I told her I couldn't help with that kind of thing. Told her she should call the police if she was having trouble with a neighbor. But you gave her a name anyway. It wasn't a question. Hollis's face went from pale to gray. Tom, I swear I didn't know. Who did you give her? A guy named Mickey Torino. He does odd jobs. Collections, mostly. But I told her I couldn't guarantee anything, that it was a bad idea. Did she pay you? $200. Tom, I'm sorry. I didn't know she was talking about you. I thought she really had neighbor trouble. Tom nodded slowly. Thanks for the honesty, Hollis. I appreciate it. He left without buying anything. In his truck, he stopped the recording and played it back. Clear as a bell. Pauline had tried to hire Muscle to intimidate him, and her own cousin had facilitated it. The pieces were falling into place. Saturday morning, Tom loaded camping gear into his truck while Reed watched from the front porch. The boy had been quiet all week, withdrawn and confused. Time for some father-son truth. Where are we going, Dad? That spot up by Lake Coeur d'Alene. Remember? Where we caught that big bass last summer. Reed climbed into the passenger seat, his mood lifting slightly. They drove north in comfortable silence, classic rock playing softly on the radio. When they reached the campsite, Tom let Reed help set up the tent and gather firewood. As the sun set over the lake, they sat by the fire roasting hot dogs. Reed stared into the flames, his young face serious beyond his years. Dad, yeah, buddy, why did Mom tell me those things about you? Tom had been waiting for this question all week. He'd rehearsed his answer, wanting to be honest without destroying Reed's relationship with his mother entirely. Sometimes adults make mistakes when they're scared or confused. Your mom is going through something right now, and it's making her think and act in ways that aren't like her. But why would she think you'd hurt us? Someone convinced her I would. Someone who doesn't know me, doesn't know us, and who wants to cause problems in our family. Reed poked at the fire with a stick. Is it because of that man? Tom's attention sharpened. What man? The one who comes to the house sometimes. When you're at work. Reed's voice was small, guilty. I wasn't supposed to tell anyone. Reed, I need you to tell me about this man. It's important. He's tall and has dark hair. Mom said he was her friend from the wellness center. She said you wouldn't understand their friendship, that you'd be jealous and angry. So, it had to be our secret. Tom felt that cold fire burn brighter in his chest. Pauline had been bringing her lover to their home, exposing their son to her deception, teaching him to lie to his father. What did they do when he was there? Talk mostly. Sometimes they'd go upstairs to Mom's office. Once I heard her crying. Reed looked up at his father. Dad, is that why she's scared of you? Because of her friend? What do you think, Reed? Based on what you know about me, about our family, does any of this make sense? Reed was quiet for a long moment. Then, no. And I think maybe she told me to point that gun at you because she knew you'd find out about her friend. Tom pulled his son close. You're a smart kid, Reed. Smarter than I was at your age. Are you and Mom going to get divorced? The question hung in the air between them like smoke from the fire. Tom could lie, could offer false hope and empty reassurances. But Reed deserved better than that. I don't know yet, son, but I want you to understand something. Whatever happens between your mother and me, it's not your fault. You didn't do anything wrong. You were trying to protect someone you love, and that's not a bad thing. The bad thing is that someone lied to you to make you think protection was necessary. Reed nodded against his father's shoulder. Will I still get to live with you? Yes, Tom said with absolute certainty. You'll always have a home with me. They sat by the fire until late, talking about school, about fishing, about anything except the family that was falling apart around them. When they finally went to bed, Reed fell asleep quickly in his sleeping bag. But Tom lay awake, staring at the tent ceiling and planning his next moves. Pauline had crossed every line there was to cross. She'd brought another man into their home, exposed their son to her lies, tried to have Tom intimidated, and ultimately weaponized Reed against him. Each betrayal built on the last, creating a tower of deception that was about to come crashing down. Tom's phone buzzed with a text from his army contact. Zev Monroe is actually Zev Marinelli. Did 5 years in Texas for fraud and assault. Real piece of work. Details attached. Tom opened the attached file and read by the light of his phone. Zev had a history of targeting married women, bilking them for money, and disappearing when things got complicated. He'd been arrested for assault after one husband discovered the affair and confronted him. Perfect. Tom and Reed returned from camping Sunday evening to find Pauline pacing the living room, her phone clutched in her hand. She rushed to the door when she heard Tom's truck in the driveway. Where were you? I've been calling and texting. Camping. I told you we were going camping. Tom carried his gear into the garage while Reed ran upstairs to shower. You didn't answer your phone. No signal up there. You know that. Tom began unpacking his camping gear with methodical precision. Something wrong. I was worried. When you didn't come home last night, we always camp overnight at Coeur d'Alene. We've done it a dozen times. Pauline watched him work, her anxiety palpable. Tom, we need to talk. About what? About us. About what happened last weekend. About Reed. Tom hung his sleeping bag on its peg, checking it for tears or wear. What about Reed? He's been asking me questions. About why I told him those things about you. I think you've been turning him against me. Have I? Tom faced her directly. What kind of questions? He wants to know if we're getting divorced. He's worried about where he'll live. Tom, we can't let our problems affect our son. The irony of that statement was so profound that Tom almost laughed. Almost. You're right. We shouldn't let our problems affect Reed. So you'll stop poisoning him against me. Pauline, Tom's voice was soft, dangerous. I haven't said a single negative word about you to our son. Every question he's asking, every worry he has, every fear you created, all of that when you convinced him to point a gun at me. You don't get to blame me for the consequences of your choices. Pauline's face crumpled. I made a mistake. I was scared and confused, and you were scared? Our 12-year-old son was the one holding a loaded weapon with his hands, shaking so hard he could barely stand. But you were scared. Don't do this, Tom. Don't twist my words. I'm not twisting anything. I'm just repeating what you said. Tom closed the camping gear cabinet and locked it. Now, If you'll excuse me, I need to check on Reed. As he walked toward the house, his phone buzzed with a text. From Pauline's number, but sent from a phone he'd never seen before. He's getting suspicious. Moving to Plan B. Friday night. Tom deleted the message without responding. But in his workshop, he typed a different message on his own phone and sent it from an anonymous texting app. Tom knows about Friday. Change of plans. Make it Wednesday instead. Come armed that he sent it to the number that had texted Pauline, then sat back to wait. The trap was set Wednesday night. Tom lay in bed listening to Pauline's breathing beside him. She'd been restless all evening, checking her phone constantly, jumping at every small sound. At 11:47 p.m., her phone buzzed with a text. She read it, then slipped out of bed. "Where are you going?" Tom asked softly. "Bathroom. Go back to sleep." But Tom was already awake, had been awake for hours. He listened to her footsteps in the hallway, heard the soft creak of Reed's door as she checked on their son. Then, 20 minutes later, Tom heard the first sound. A soft scraping at the back door, metal against metal. Someone picking the lock. Tom slipped out of bed and moved silently to his dresser. He pulled out a small digital camera, already set to night vision mode, and positioned it on the bookshelf with a clear view of the bedroom doorway. Another camera went on the kitchen counter, angled toward the back door. The lock clicked open. Tom returned to bed, lying on his side facing away from the door. His breathing was slow and steady, the picture of sleep. But his hand rested near the tactical flashlight on his nightstand, and his body was coiled like a spring. Soft footsteps on the kitchen floor. A pause at the bottom of the stairs. Then the slow, careful ascent toward the bedroom. Tom controlled his breathing, listening to the intruder's approach. Whoever was moved with practiced stealth, but not perfect stealth. Tom had heard better from insurgents in Kandahar. The bedroom door opened with the faintest whisper of hinges. A shadow filled the doorway, tall, lean, dressed in dark clothes with something covering his face. The shadow moved into the room, heading for Tom's side of the bed. In his peripheral vision, Tom could see the glint of something metallic in the intruder's hand. A knife, maybe, or a small club. The shadow raised his weapon. Tom exploded into motion. He rolled left off the bed, grabbed the tactical flashlight, and triggered its strobe function. The room erupted in blinding, disorienting flashes of white light. The intruder stumbled backward, cursing, his weapon clattering to the floor. Tom vaulted over the bed and tackled him. They crashed into the dresser, sending picture frames and jewelry flying. The intruder was strong, but unprepared for Tom's speed and aggression. Tom drove his knee into the man's solar plexus, doubling him over, then wrapped his arm around the intruder's throat in a blood choke. "Stop fighting," Tom growled in his ear. "You're done." The man struggled for another few seconds, then went limp. Tom eased the pressure, but didn't release the hold. He reached over and turned on the bedroom light. Zev Monroe lay unconscious on the floor, a ski mask pulled over his face and a tire iron beside him. Tom knelt and checked his pulse strong and steady. Then he zip-tied Zev's hands behind his back with restraints he'd placed under the bed earlier. Pauline's voice called from downstairs. "Tom? What was that noise?" Tom pulled out his phone and called 911. "This is Tom Creed at 1247 Maple Street. I've got an intruder in my house. He's restrained but still alive. I need police and an ambulance." Pauline burst into the bedroom 3 minutes later, her face a mask of shock and horror. She was fully dressed despite supposedly having been asleep downstairs. "Oh my God. Tom, what happened?" "Who is that?" Tom stood beside the unconscious Zev, his phone still recording video. "Funny thing. You tell me who he is." "I don't know. I've never seen him before in my life." Pauline's voice pitched higher with each word. "I heard a crash and came running." "From where?" "What? You came running from where?" "You went to the bathroom 40 minutes ago and never came back to bed." Pauline's mouth opened and closed like a fish. I couldn't sleep. I went downstairs to watch TV." "In your clothes?" She looked down at herself as if just realizing she was fully dressed in jeans and a sweater. "I got cold. I put clothes on." Tom pulled off Zev's ski mask. Even unconscious, the man's face was recognizable from the photos in his criminal background report. "Still don't know him," Tom, I swear I've never. Tom pulled out his phone and played one of the audio recordings from Pauline's car. Her voice filled the room, clear as crystal. Zev, I can't do this anymore. Tom's getting suspicious. Maybe we should just tell him everything. Then Zev's voice. Don't be stupid, Pauline. We're in too deep now. If he finds out, we follow the plan we discussed. Pauline's face went white as bone. Where did you get that? Your car. Amazing what people will say when they think no one's listening. Tom played another recording, this one from the motel. Everyone has a breaking point, Pauline. We just need to find his. Tom, I can explain. Can you explain this? Tom showed her the GPS tracking data on his phone. 14 visits to the Valley Motel in the past 6 weeks. Always the same room. Always for 2 hours. Pauline sank in a chair by the window, her whole body shaking. It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. You've been having an affair with a convicted felon who has a history of targeting married women. You convinced our son to threaten me with a loaded weapon. You try to hire muscle to intimidate me. And tonight, you let your boyfriend into our house so he could attack me while I slept. I didn't know he was going to hurt you. I thought he was just going to scare you. Maybe take some pictures. Of what? Me sleeping? Or me fighting for my life? Reed appeared in the doorway, rubbing his eyes. Dad, what's happening? Why are the police here? Tom could hear sirens approaching. He knelt down to Reed's level. Son, go to your room and pack a bag. You're going to stay with Uncle Lenny tonight. But why? Just do it, Reed. Everything's going to be okay, but I need you to go pack right now. Reed looked at his mother, at the unconscious stranger on the floor, at his father's grim expression. Then he ran to his room. Pauline started crying. Tom, please. We can work this out. I made mistakes, but we can fix this. Tom looked at her for a long moment. You brought another man into our home. You exposed our son to your lies. You convinced a child to threaten his father with a deadly weapon. And tonight, you open our door to someone who came here to hurt me, maybe kill me. What exactly do you think we can fix? The sirens grew louder. Red and blue lights flashed through the bedroom windows. Please, Pauline whispered. I love you. Tom's expression didn't change. No, you don't. If you loved me, none of this would have happened. Detective Laura Raines was a compact woman with silver-streaked hair and eyes that missed nothing. She'd been working domestic cases for 15 years and had developed an instinct for sorting truth from lies. She stood in Tom's bedroom at 2 a.m., looking at the unconscious intruder, the broken furniture, and the married couple whose lives had just exploded. Mr. Creed, can you walk me through what happened? Tom handed her his phone. Everything's on here. Audio recordings, GPS tracking data, video from tonight's break-in. I've been documenting my wife's affair and the escalating threats for the past week. Rain scrolled through the files, her eyebrows rising with each piece of evidence. This is very thorough, almost like you were expecting something to happen. I was. My wife and her boyfriend have been planning something for days. I just didn't know exactly what until tonight. And how did you obtain these recordings? Audio device in my wife's car, which I own half of. GPS tracker on a vehicle registered to me. All legal. Tom's voice was steady, matter of fact. I was protecting myself and my son from people who had already demonstrated they were willing to use violence. Raines looked at Pauline, who sat on the bed with tears streaming down her face. Mrs. Creed, do you want to tell me your version of events? I don't know anything about this. I was downstairs and heard a crash. Ma'am, Raines held up the phone. I just listened to recordings of you planning this with the suspect. You want to try again? Pauline's face crumpled entirely. I never meant for anyone to get hurt. Tom was getting suspicious, and Zev said we needed to do something before he found out about us. But I thought he was just going to scare Tom, maybe get some photos we could use in divorce proceedings. Photos of what? Of Tom being violent. Zev said if we could prove Tom was dangerous, I could get full custody of Reed. Raines looked back at Tom. And you knew this was coming? I suspected. So I prepared. Cameras, recordings, documentation. I wanted everything on record when they made their move. You built this like a soldier on a mission. Tom's expression remained flat. No, like a husband who won't be made a fool. Paramedics arrived and loaded the still unconscious Zev onto a stretcher. As they wheeled him out, he started to come around, mumbling incoherently. Raines turned back to Tom. This is one of the most complete cases I've ever seen. You got conspiracy, breaking and entering, assault with a deadly weapon, endangering child. Your wife and her boyfriend are looking at serious time. Good. No desire for reconciliation? Working things out. Tom looked at Pauline one last time. She was begging him with her eyes, silently pleading for mercy, for understanding, for forgiveness. Detective, he said quietly, they turned my 12-year-old son into a weapon against me. They made him point a loaded gun at his father while telling him I was going to kill his mother. What exactly do you think there is to work out? Raines nodded grimly. I'll need you to come to the station tomorrow to give a formal statement. But Mr. Creed, you did everything right here. You protected yourself and your son. You did it by the book. As the police led Pauline away in handcuffs, she looked back at Tom one more time. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. Tom didn't respond. He was already thinking about tomorrow, about Reed, about the custody battle that was coming. But for the first time in weeks, the burning in his chest had cooled to something manageable. Justice had a way of doing that. 3 months later, Tom sat across from Pauline in family court. She'd hired an expensive lawyer who painted her as a confused, manipulated woman who'd made poor choices while under the influence of a criminal boyfriend. Tom's lawyer presented the recordings, the GPS data, the evidence of child endangerment that Pauline's attorney argued for supervised visitation, claiming their client had learned from her mistakes and deserved a chance to rebuild her relationship with her son. Reed had been in therapy since the night of the break-in. The therapist testified that the boy showed clear signs of trauma from being weaponized against his father, and that he'd expressed fear about being alone with his mother. Your Honor, Tom's lawyer said during closing arguments, Mrs. Creed didn't just have an affair. She systematically manipulated and traumatized her own child, turning him into an instrument of violence against his father. She endangered this family repeatedly through her relationship with a convicted felon, and she facilitated a violent attack on her husband in the family home. This isn't about marital problems. This is about child safety. Pauline's lawyer countered. Mrs. Creed made mistakes, but she's getting help. She's in counseling. She's ended the relationship that led to poor judgment, and she wants to rebuild trust with her son. Denying her custody entirely would be punitive rather than rehabilitative. The judge was a stern woman in her 60s who'd presided over thousands of custody cases. She looked at the evidence for a long time before speaking. I've reviewed all the materials presented to this court. The recordings, the documentation, the testimony of the child's therapist. Mrs. Creed, your actions went far beyond marital infidelity. You placed your child in danger repeatedly. You manipulated him into threatening his father with a deadly weapon, and you facilitated a violent crime in your family home. Pauline's face went white. Furthermore, your son has expressed clear fear about being alone with you, and his therapist believes that contact at this time would be harmful to his recovery. Therefore, I am awarding full physical and legal custody to Mr. Creed, with supervised visitation for Mrs. Creed to be evaluated after 1 year of counseling and continued therapy. The gavel came down like a gunshot. Pauline burst into tears, reaching toward Reed, who sat beside his father. The boy didn't reach back. Outside the courthouse, Tom knelt down to Reed's level. How are you feeling, buddy? Sad, but also relieved. Reed looked confused by his own emotions. Does that make me a bad son? No, it makes you honest. Your feelings are allowed to be complicated. Will Mom get better? Tom considered his answer carefully. I hope she will. But whether she does or not, you're safe now. That's what matters. Reed nodded and took his father's hand. They walked to Tom's truck together, ready to go home. 6 months after the break-in, Pauline sat across from Tom in a coffee shop downtown. She'd lost weight, looked older, her once bright demeanor dimmed to something gray and brittle. She'd asked to meet, claiming she wanted to apologize properly. Thank you for coming, she said when Tom sat down. He didn't order anything, didn't settle in. This wasn't a social visit. I want to tell you how sorry I am. About everything. About Reed, about Zev, about all of it. Tears started flowing down her cheeks. I know I destroyed our family. I know I hurt our son in ways that can't be undone. But Tom, please, can't we find some way forward? Some way to be a family again? Tom looked at her for a long moment. Once, he'd loved this woman more than anything in the world. He'd built a life with her, trusted her completely, given her everything he had to give. Pauline, yes. Do you remember what you told Reed the morning he pointed that gun at me? She flinched. Tom, I was confused. Do you remember what you told him? I told him you were going to hurt us. You told our 12-year-old son that his father was planning to murder his mother. You convinced him that the only way to protect you was to threaten me with a loaded weapon. You took our child and turned him into a weapon against me. I know I did that, and I hate myself for it. But I was scared and desperate, and you chose to hurt our son rather than face the consequences of your own choices. Tom's voice was quiet, final. There's no coming back from that, Pauline. There's no apology that fixes what you did to Reed. No amount of crying that undoes the trauma you caused him. Please, Tom, I'll do anything. Counseling, therapy, whatever you want. Just give me a chance to make this right. Tom stood up. You're a ghost now, Pauline. You don't get to haunt my life anymore. Or his. He walked away without looking back. Behind him, he heard her sobbing, but it meant nothing to him. Some betrayals were too deep for forgiveness. Some wounds too fundamental to heal. Tom Creed had learned that lesson the hard way, but he learned it completely. Spring came early to Spokane that year. Tom stood in his garage, now converted into a woodworking shop, teaching Reed how to use a hand plane. The boy was 13 now, taller, more confident. The hollow look had left his eyes. Feel how the wood wants to give, Tom said, guiding Reed's hands. Don't force it. Let the tool do the work. Reed made a long, smooth cut, producing a perfect curl of cedar shaving. Like that. Exactly like that. The garage door was open to the warm afternoon air. Ms. Granger waved from her garden across the street, and Tom waved back. Lenny's truck pulled into the driveway, and Tom's brother-in-law climbed out with a cooler of beer and a bag of barbecue. How's the master craftsman doing? Lenny asked Reed. Dad's teaching me to make a jewelry box. For when I have a girlfriend someday. Smart man. Always good to have skills. They worked until the sun started setting, 3 generations of men sharing tools and stories and the quiet satisfaction of building something with their hands. When they finally stopped for the day, Tom looked out at the setting sun and felt something he hadn't experienced in over a year. Peace, not the desperate, hollow peace of someone trying to forget trauma, but the deep, earned peace of a man who'd faced betrayal and emerged stronger, who'd protected what mattered most and rebuilt what could be rebuilt. Reed leaned against his father's shoulder as they watched the sunset. Dad! Yeah, buddy. I'm glad it's just us. Tom put his arm around his son. Me too. The past was buried. The future stretched ahead of them, clean and full of possibility. And in this moment, in his workshop with his son beside him, and the sunset painting everything gold, Tom Creed was exactly where he belonged. Some men were destroyed by betrayal. Others were forged stronger by it. Tom had chosen which kind of man he would be.